Ladies and gentlemen, the topic at hand is lifelong learning and fostering a culture of curiosity. Joining us is the Development Coordination Officer, Partnerships and Development Finance, UN Resident Coordinator's Office, United Nations, India. Please welcome Sukhman Randhawa. Joining us up next, Managing Partner, the Nudge Institute. Please put your hands together for Akshay Soni. Please welcome Founder and President, Enon Global Foundation, Dr. Aarti Girdhar. And completing the panel, it's time to welcome the session chair. Please welcome the President, Lee Kuan Yew, School of Public Policy, NUS, India Alumni Chapter. Please give it up for Ramona Bakshi.
Lifelong learning and fostering a culture of curiosity. Yeah, thank you very much. So welcome, as I said, and welcome to our session of lifelong learning and fostering a culture of curiosity. I'm happy to have with me Ms. Sukhman Randhawa, Mr. Akshay Soni, and Dr. Aarti Girdhar. So to set the context, and when we look at the situational analysis, lifelong learning is a very, very important topic. It's a topic that is critical in terms of where we are today to achieve our SDGs and what we want to do as well. So given that context, today's session, we're going to be asking some of our panelists some questions in terms of the importance, how important it is for India in terms of its economic and social development. So my first question is to Sukhman. How does lifelong learning align with the UN SDGs, particularly in achieving the SDGs for India?
Thank you, Ramona, and a very good afternoon, good evening. I don't know what's the time right now. But just to give a little bit of context of where we are with SDGs right now, globally, the SDGs are a North Star for development, but currently only 15% of the SDGs are on track, and around 1 have regressed or stalled. So it's a very gloomy picture when it comes to SDGs. But the hopeful part is that India is critical in achieving the SDGs. We have 1/6 of humanity in India, residing in India. That means around half or 1/3 of SDG goals reside in India. So India can do for SDGs what China did for MDGs. And one of the critical pieces to look at is SDG 4, which is access to quality learning and lifelong learning, which is very, very critical in the complex times that we are living in. I would like to highlight 3 key challenges that our world is facing. One is climate change and the disruptions caused by climate change. The second big challenge is the digital revolution, both the opportunities and the pitfalls. And the third piece is the conflicts and polycrisis that our world is facing. So for all of these, we need solutions, unique insights, unique skill sets, adaptive mindsets that only come through, the capacities that can be built through lifelong learning. And particularly, lifelong learning should be addressed to harness the power of women and also our youth demographic dividend, as well as the aging dividend, because India is at a very crucial crossroads. So I'll stop here and, if you have...
No, thank you so much, Sukhman, for sharing that context. I'll now like to ask Akshay, what are some of the specific challenges you've observed in promoting lifelong learning among communities in India? And what do you, suggest are ways in which we can bridge this gap?
Sure, thanks, Ramona. All right, so first up, traditionally, it's a question of privilege. Lifelong learning starts with privilege in most cases, whereas communities that we're working, a lot of us are working in, traditionally are in the survival or scarcity mindset. And it's very difficult to get lifelong learning done at that spot, right? It's about where my next meal is coming from rather than what I can do to better my life. That's the first challenge. The second one is that very often this set of people at the bottom of the pyramid is told that theirs is not to question why, theirs is to do or die. which is something that's happened over decades, over generations. So to some extent, it also seeps into mindset. So this compounds the scarcity mindset that they're already working with. And the third is that they don't really have in the community a set of capacitators or an ecosystem that is actually going to be around to encourage some of the early movers who are actually bucking these mindsets and asking those questions, right? So those are the three pieces in terms of where we've seen some level of obstacles to this. In terms of solves, well, for one, yes, we've made strides in poverty alleviation in India. So hopefully some is a function of time from a survival mindset. And various programs, I've seen a variety of people do different things. As an example, when we start on our economic inclusion program, we start with actually giving them food, because then they have the ability to listen and absorb the skills that we're about to talk to them about entrepreneurship, about creating enough income over a sustained period of time. I've seen similar approaches across the place. So I think that's one key element. The other is definitely catching them early. We need to have, life skills in there being prioritized potentially over super specializations. Show of hands of who's seen Three Idiots. I assume a lot of us have. Where he says that, where Amir Khan's telling Kareena Kapoor कि ये वो गधा है जो अब जो पहले इंजीनियरिंग करने गया था, फिर यूएस जाके एमबीए करके आया और फिर अब इंडिया में बैंक के लिए काम कर रहा है. We're all pretty much in that set of gadhas, right? It takes a while to break out of it, but the point is, if we start prioritizing the right set of skills, the ability to ask questions, to learn, that becomes a very differentiated point of view, and that needs to start very young from a school perspective, rather than getting into it that late in life where organizations are trying to reteach us that we need to ask questions. So those two would be the main things that I'd basically look at.
And thank you so much, Akshay. Aarti, my next question is to you. In your experience of teaching life skills, how do you inspire individuals to embrace lifelong learning and stay adaptable in an ever-evolving world?
Thank you so much. Yes, Akshay well said that I am connected with more than 300 schools now. We are working on mental health and life skill awareness in these public, government, whosoever call us, we go over there and we do free of cost workshop, because at times the school take time to say yes for the everything. So that is why we feel that time is very crucial. So we are putting our time in these schools and connecting with the youth. Yes, making the children understand that lifelong learning should be the priority. Basically, their priority is getting the marks over the subjects and all that. But once we make them understand that the life skill that take a major role in their rest of the life, they are more calmer. And they know how to do this critical thinking, decision making and all that, those 21st century skills that we are talking about, they can be addressed much earlier. Even, see the roles have been changed. If I say that in a school, we need to train the children that this is the job of a student. Because a job profile has something that you need to work upon. Once we make them understand this is your job to be a student and what are the parameters that you need to learn, and that should be lifelong. So they stop doing those cramming things for only one particular vision. So it's very important to make them sensitize, learn by heart, apply, and then see the world in a different way. This world is beautiful, but the only thing is that aggression and everything that is building up in their minds and heart, they are in the competitive world. And because of that, they look into, oh, Zomato, quick delivery. Oh, Amazon, quick delivery. That is why our youth is not calmer, not having that, I often say that being bored is good. Because if Sir Isaac Newton was not bored and he was not sitting under the tree, he might have not observed that the apple is falling and gravity was never being discovered. So lifelong learning is like that, where people will come to know that yes, there is an impact and these are the connecting dots in my life that has made a difference. Yeah, thank you.
No, thank you so much, Dr. Aarti. And when we look at unpacking curiosity and the role of leadership and systems play a very, very critical role. So Sukhman, how can leaders in the social sector cultivate a culture of curiosity within their organization to drive innovation and impact, especially in regards to lifelong learning?
Thanks, Ramona. Thank you. I think this is a very loaded question. I think people are globally struggling with the challenges of leadership and life skills. These are such nuanced skills that we've all faced issues in our workplaces and with managers and so forth. But what I'd like to say is people in the development sector are solving the challenges of humanity. That is like a great, great thing to do. And you know, it's very imperative that international civil servants, for instance, people working in the UN or people in the working in the development sector are equipped with the right skills to solve these problems. Because increasingly these problems are so multidisciplinary, so multi-sectoral, and the skills that we had perhaps even 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, to address some challenges are not going to be sufficient to address the same challenges, because just of how linked they are globally to so many issues that are impacting them. So I think it's in the interest of organizations and, you know, cultures even within, for instance, the UN system, to develop skills such as life skills, lifelong learning, and I think managers play a critical role in fostering this sort of, you know, system in these organizations. I'd particularly like to give two examples. I myself, you know, I worked for 10 years in the former government, and after that I went to study again with my 2-year-old daughter. It was very challenging. I'm just saying that the structures aren't very enabling when you do want to re-equip yourself with new skills. But I went to do another master's, and there was great insights I learned, particularly at that time was around data-driven policy making. It was a relatively new term. Of course, now in the development sector, everybody is talking about it. But that for me was a crucial thing that I learned, and that really changed my mindset on how we were doing policies at that time. So that's just one example. And two, I want to highlight the idea, the case of AI. Right? We are all looking at how AI can make either jobs redundant or even the way we do work different, or just, you know, fundamentally change the nature of the workplace or work. So if we are looking at building skill sets, lifelong learning particularly, we have to focus on new emerging skills which are disruptive, which are innovative, and so organizations do need to focus on how do they equip their workforce with skills such as AI and so forth. But I'll stop here, and you know, if there are any follow-up questions.
No, thank you so much, Sukhman. The leadership does indeed, managers, leaders do indeed play a very, very critical role. I know, Akshay, you are a part of the development space. I'm sure you'd like to add in a little bit also to that question. And it'll be good also to hear from you, you know, what systematic changes or policy interventions are needed to embed curiosity as a foundational value in the education and workforce development space in India, apart from, you know, what can leaders do to cultivate lifelong learning within organizations?
Sure. Thanks. Thanks, Ramona. One of the things that, you know, that I was surprised by when I moved, so after about 18 years of investment banking, I moved to the social sector. That itself was a very interesting learning experience. It took me, I think, a year to get used to the words that I found around theory of change, etc., all of that. So it was, again, you know, it was similar to doing a master's in terms of an immersion. But what I found very interesting was that that we had a policy which was a kick-ass model of recruitment, which was you hire for attitude, smarts, and skills in that order. In investment banking, we hired for exactly the opposite order. It was skills first, smarts after, and we paid enough money for them not to have any attitude, right? So it worked really well. And I realized that that flip, while partly a function of the fact the social sector does not pay enough money and therefore attitude is clearly important if you're not coming in, and we've had discussions around the armed forces also. So if you're not coming in with an attitude to serve, then it's not something that's going to work. But over time, I also realized we also had, and we see this very often in the social sector, you have horizontal movement, right? I ended up for 8-9 months period, very painfully, being head of marketing also, apart from the typical program hat that I wore, and realized a lot of skills are actually transferable, right? In the social sector, we actually do a really good job of utilizing individuals, and if we can keep our mind to that, I think on a constant basis, people are willing to relearn, transfer a set of skills, learn another set of skills, and do something else. And that, of course, also keeps people with us for longer, right? Every organization is looking for that. So that's my point on that one. Just to go back to your second question. See, one is just the fact, and Sukhman also just alluded to that when she was talking about AI. I've heard anywhere between 80 to 97% of jobs will disappear in the next 10 to 15 years, right? Everyone's heard that. So what are we going to bring to the table becomes the large question. And that has to be that attitude of learning, that ability to make that intuitive leap, which today technology can't do, right? It might get there, and then we'll have to figure out something else. But as of today, that is something that tech can't do, and that is something that we are uniquely qualified to, but provided we are constantly willing to relearn and reskill ourselves, right? When I was growing up, then searching on Google was actually a skill set. Now it's actually ChatGPT prompts, and that is emerging as a skill set. So can we learn? Can we get into that? Because proposal writing, making PowerPoints is done. There are free apps available for doing that. That was a skill set that I learned early up in my days. I worked very well in investment banking, more form than substance, but I don't think that works any longer. So we'll have to constantly change. And the last piece in there is basically is also upskilling the teachers, right? And changing the system. From a policy perspective, it is critical for first policymakers to talk to industry and find out why industry doyens who've created thousands, tens of thousands of jobs actually go out in the paper and say that 80% of India's engineers, the cream of the crop, is unemployable. That's a pretty big statement, and it's been around for a while, right? So, and more than one industry leader has said this. So design thinking, go back to the people who employ, find out what are the skill sets that are required, and I guarantee you constant relearning, reskilling, upskilling is something that's going to come back from the industry. So that's definitely one. The second is to get teachers to learn that in terms of the fact, and again, I am not holding teachers responsible. They do a job that I wouldn't touch with a barge pole, and full respect to all the teachers who've suffered with me over the years. But the point is that the system prioritizes rote learning. It still has not come to a place where case studies are critical, etc. I'm not saying there's not movement. There is. When I was a child, we had to write down every date in history, right, and memorize it. And now when the teacher told me a few months back for my daughter, dates are not necessarily, she just needs to remember the chronology, I was impressed, right? We are moving. It's taken a long time for us to move that distance. But the point is it's in the right direction. We just need to see a lot more of this happening so that we actually then start building in life skills as the critical element, that intuition, the questioning as the critical element, rather than what we have today. Sorry, that was a very long answer.
No, thank you so much, Akshay, because it's very important when you look at how you want to strengthen the system, right? And to say that we need to build the capacity right from the start. I think that is what's going to really unlock the entire role of leadership and systems when we look at, the curiosity of moving with lifelong learning. Dr. Aarti, there's a lot of work you do in life skills education. How do you perceive leaders and systems that can foster an environment where curiosity drives innovation and growth?
Thank you so much. First of all, before answering, I just want to ask the question from the audience. How many of you like to listen to the stories? Almost everyone. Agar मैं कहूँ तो we are at the putla of stories, where we get engaged ourselves. So the kind of curiosity that can be developed is basically through the stories. In fact, if you see the organizations also, when they conduct the trainings and all that, lot of motivational speakers talk about the stories that happen in their life, and that is why they are applying it. So it's very important. We need to see, we all are individuals with our own creative minds. And some people who have the attitude not to learn, they can never become a lifelong learner. But those who have the attitude, please work on them and then see the difference. Because I often say that, because one of the principal told me that I put a lot of effort in connecting with the adolescent, but she said, Aarti, tum jitne marzi baar aa jao, but this generation is a thankless generation. I told her, ma'am, we are a generation who is very resilient. Doesn't matter, let them be thankless. I keep on coming, and one day will come when they will say thank you to me. So that is what the attitude of us being resilient, and we need to develop this kind of thing in our youth, as they are surrounded with a lot of information, and this information, whatever they are absorbing, they are just vomiting out. So it's very important. We need to take them back through these stories that have a long-lasting impact on them. That is why even at a highest level of leadership, please narrate certain stories that may have the connecting dots in the young minds or the old minds. So it's very important. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Resilience is I think it's utmost importance. And when we're looking at change, building collaborative frameworks is also a very essential aspect of, ensuring lifelong learning amongst learners and amongst professionals and amongst each one of us here in the room. My question to you is, Sukhman, there's a lot of great examples of, work that's being done. Can you share with us some examples of cross-sectoral collaborations that have significantly advanced the partnerships that are working towards lifelong learning?
Before I launch into the answer to this question, because I have these really boring UN type questions directed at me, I do want to say that, someone once told me that birds are evolutions of dinosaurs. They are adaptations of dinosaurs, right? It really stayed in my mind, and that the same person told me that we have a lot of focus throughout life around outward learning and less around inward learning. And I don't mean this in a spiritual sense. I mean this in trying to understand yourself as an individual, responding to situations, and to your point of resilience. These are qualities that are not inculcated enough in our systems, and these are qualities that stand by you in moments of crisis, whether professional, whether personal. So I think that is something in life skills, lifelong learning, that should be constantly be there for people to access, in the world. So I think that is a critical piece. In terms of partnerships, UN, of course, is very, very cognizant of the fact that we cannot solve any challenges of our lifetimes today individually in silos, as is the entire development sector. There are a lot of convergences happening now, which never used to happen earlier. People were very sectoral focused. This organization works on this works on that, which is not the case anymore. If you even take agricultural reform, it is actually the lens of the entire food system, the food ecosystem you have to look at, how the crop is grown, what is the, footprint of pesticides, what is the nutrition content. It goes to the elements of food security and so forth, or the usage of water. So many elements, organizations working on water, food systems, food security, nutrition, all have to come together to solve the understanding and challenge of food systems. So I would say partnerships are extremely critical, and we need to create platforms such as these where conversations can start to lead to action, where people can converge to create collaborations. Otherwise it's very difficult for people sometimes to even understand what's happening in the ecosystem. Here at least people meet and see, okay, this person in this organization is sort of trying to solve something aligned to what I'm solving. So the UN, of course, is very, very open to partnerships. That's why they have a person like me focused on partnerships. But we are building a lot of partnerships, particularly on youth, innovation, strengthening innovation ecosystems for youth, access to 21st century skills for youth, women. A huge focus for us is women empowerment as well, developing, ecosystems for entrepreneurship for women. Also looking at intersections of disability, climate, social protection. Social protection is also a key piece that we are looking at in terms of access for social protection for marginalized groups. So, of course, we have UN works on the principle of leaving no one behind, and there's a plethora of projects, frameworks, partnerships that we do. So I don't want to delve into individual ones, but we work a lot with CSOs. We are very open to working with private sector partners, which we do, and government, of course, is our traditional partner. And I would really say that platforms such as these are very critical for people to talk, voice their opinions, and also engage more constructively towards solving problems of the future. Thanks.
Thank you, Sukhman. Yes, indeed. I mean, we need platforms like this to open the conversation, to get people interested. Akshay, how do you envision partnerships between global institutions to amplify the impact of lifelong learning initiatives for India?
Right, I can see our host standing to push us off, so I'm going to be very quick on this one. Two main things. One is that global institutions like the UN and others actually get to see various models. In the social sector, very often we start wearing blinders and get very focused on our solution. I think it's very valuable to see learnings from elsewhere, places like Africa, etc. I'm not talking about transplantation of, even when Flipkart got the Amazon model, they introduced something that was critical for India, cash on delivery. Because we did not believe that someone's going to give us something after we've already paid the money, right? When Amazon came to India, they also adopted cash on delivery. So it's not pure transplantation, but we can pick up those learnings, and international institutions are best placed from a partnership perspective to bring those learnings to us with some flexibility. The second one is basically funding, right? At the end of the day, a lot of CSR funding, given the way that it is governed today, is looking for quicker answers. So their ability to experiment is much lower. The government's ability to experiment is extremely low, right? So we need to prove pilots at scale and POCs before we can get the government to actually adopt this and take this to scale. So therefore, if the institutions could actually bring in maybe a revolving pool of money, right? We can do blended finance. They get their money back when it is proven, and if it doesn't, then that's the money that's gone. But that's the point of experiments, right? That advantage basically is something that they could bring in and accelerate the process. We'll get there, but they could basically save us decades of, trying to get that money out and doing those experiments. And then finally, of course, helping the social sector again to partner with government, take these POCs to scale, because at the end of the day, no one in this country or any other country for that matter has the kind of distribution infrastructure that the government has, and therefore that's where we'll have to go finally.
Yeah, absolutely. Pilots for scale. I think that's very important. And there's a lot the government can learn, and even the power of partnerships. It's all about what are some of the ideas that can be tested and then taken up to scale. Thank you so much, Akshay, for that. Though we're speaking from a power of partnerships perspective, Aarti, how do you see individuals being empowered to, basically contribute to collaborative frameworks for driving meaningful change in communities that they serve in. So from an individual perspective, it'll be good to hear your thoughts on, collaborative frameworks for change.
Yes, since we deal with the youth again, we focus basically on networking among them because there are so many youth who are bottling up the things and they are not ready to learn and unlearn, as Akshay has said. That is very important to make the children understand as this world is changing at a very fast pace. So we need to accept that kind of changes that are happening. And as a result, this is only possible when we collaborate and we discuss the things. I will wind up over it.
Okay, perfect. And as we are got the buzzer on, time buzzer, can you just share in one word, one tangible action or word each of the audience here can implement to basically prioritize lifelong learning and curiosity in their own workspace? So Sukhman, any one word that comes to your mind that can be
UN
shared?
people shouldn't be told to answer things in one word, but what I really like
One sentence then.
what I really liked what Akshay said about best practice exchange, which we are working a lot on as well. I would leave it with that. I think that could benefit any organization, any individual, anyone, anywhere.
Okay, if I can, I'm going to take a couple of sentences. One is just to follow up on that. In the social sector, we basically have the not invented here syndrome. Whereas in the corporate sector, we used to call it adopting best practices. So we need to learn something from that. Pick up whatever works, build on it. Don't try to basically reinvent the wheel. The second one is, if there is one thing I'd ask people to take, is read a book, consume a podcast, doesn't matter. Anything to not do with your work, but anything that interests you. It is the start of a habit that will lead to lifelong learning, at least it did for me. So that's what I'd suggest. However you consume information is irrelevant. I like books, but podcasts, YouTube videos, whatever you prefer.
I would like to say that we, at any age, need to understand that growth mindset can do lot of difference in our life. We just have to understand, be a listener, because when we make children or anybody understand what listen means, it means you need to just jumble it up and it come out to be silent. So first you need to listen, because there are many people who are bottled with mental health issues and they are not talking. They just need ears to listen. And hence we want that growth mindset of everyone. Even if the grandparents, we need to make them understand that is the need at our age, or the young child also need that kind of mindset. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, panelists. Just to sum it up, India plays a very important role for us to achieve the SDGs. Learning starts young, as many of you mentioned. Skills are important, just not marks. I think that was very interesting to hear. Personal experiences, storytelling is one aspect that we need to look at when we're looking at lifelong learning. Start with a habit. I love that. Go outside your workplace, look at something new to do, learn to listen to podcasts, read a book. I think that's very important to ensure we're lifelong learning and building our curiosity as well, and adopt a growth mindset. Thank you so much, panelists, and thank you everyone, and have a wonderful evening.